This is an RC car body a buddy of mine asked me to paint for him. This body has this thin film on the outside that gives it that whitish look, but that's there to keep it from getting damaged in shipping or storage, you know. And then when you paint it, it doesn't allow the overspray to stick to the outside of the body. So I typically leave that on until I'm done painting. I would also normally cut out the wheel wells before I cut it, or before I painted it, but I don't have the chassis here, so I don't have the ability to cut those tires out. So I'm going to leave it like that. These other two bodies that I've got have like a flat interior panel for like a driver insert. This is a dirt late model, and typically they don't have windows. This one, because it doesn't have the driver insert, I'm going to leave those windows there. This other one, see how it's built with like the driver panel, and then it's got a roof that goes on that will be painted separately. Since this one doesn't have that, I'm going to have to mask these windows, and it did not come with a window mask kit. Typically they would come with a window mask kit that you would peel these stickers off and put them down. Since I don't have that, I've got to mask these, and there's two different ways that we could mask this. One, we could do tape and use a razor blade to cut the edges out, potentially slicing through the plastic or damaging it, giving it a place where it could fracture later on. Or we could paint on what is called a liquid mask. You use a brush and you basically paint on. It's almost like a Elmer's glue consistency. We brush that all in, and then it's basically, as it dries, it seals up. When we're done, we peel that off, and it leaves a clean area there. I am going to do the liquid mask just because I think that I'll have less of a chance of cutting the body and giving it a fracture point. Basically, this is really thin plastic, and when you cut those lines out with an X-Acto knife, you do scratch that pretty deep sometimes, depending on how hard you cut. If your razor blade isn't sharp, you tend to push harder and you damage that plastic more. So always use a sharp blade. Slice through it gently so that later on, where that's thin there, when the body flexes, it doesn't take a chance in cracking and breaking there. We race slot cars, which are a thin body. They're like, I don't know, 7 thousandths or 10 thousandths of an inch thick. But they're so thin when we're painting these, if I cut this with the razor blade, I'm probably definitely either going to slice right through it or it'll break there really, really easily when we race it. So you got to be really careful about those sort of things. I'm going to go through a couple different techniques on how to do this, mask it, paint it efficiently without damaging the body. The first thing I did was I washed it really, really good with soap and water, and I Scotch-Brited it. So this is a red Scotch-Brite. It's a bit coarser than the gray Scotch-Brites, and I guess I'm out of the gray ones. Oh, there's one right there. This is the gray one. This is the one I actually used when I was scuffing these. It's a softer Scotch-Brite, but it'll put in roughly like a 400 grit scratch. So you scuff it really, really good. But again, because you don't want to damage the windows, when you're scuffing it, I laid out a little bit of tape, scuffed it, peeled the tape off, laid out tape. I never laid it out and cut it so that I didn't damage it. I just put individual pieces on there and scuffed it as good as I could. After I got done scuffing it, I took some 80 grit sandpaper and I went around all of my edges and I sanded them good and smooth. When you're cutting this stuff with tin snips or with scissors, inevitably you're going to get a little bit of a jagged edge, and if you go to run your thumb down that edge, it'll probably cut your skin or catch you a little bit, and it's just not comfortable when you're picking this car up a whole lot. So I go through and I sand all my edges, and it just makes stuff a little bit cleaner. It's those little details that just set it apart, you know. Another thing, when you sand it, you can make sure that line doesn't have these whoops, little jumps and bumps in it. You can make sure that it's nice and smooth so that when it's on track, it's nice and smooth, sealed up, and it looks good. So this is the liquid mask I was talking about. I think I picked this up at Hobby Lobby. It was, there it is right there, $7.75. This is a really good material if you're painting stuff where it's hard to lay out tape, or you're going to have a lot of cutting. As long as you can brush it on smooth and with a sharp edge, you're going to be fine. When you peel that off, you don't want your edge to go all, swoopy and whoopy, just like, sanding the nose and smoothing everything out. You want to keep that line straight. Another way you can do this is you can lay down fine line tape, brush this stuff down, and then when it's all done and hardened, you could peel it off, gently peel that fine line tape and leave yourself really clean. Alright, so I've got most of the windows done. I've got to finish up these last two, so I wanted to slow it down and kind of give you a little bit better look at what's going on. Just a regular old brush. Just brush it right on in there. It's that simple. There we go. All done. My next step, after I get everything masked where I want it, knowing that the first thing I put down is going to be the first thing on top. So as opposed to painting like a helmet where you paint it and then you paint it and then you paint it, you can stack the colors to what you're going to see. Here, you've got to stack them all backwards. So whatever you want to see most, you're going to have to put on first. Now, if you were to put down a white color or a light, like a light yellow, and then back it with black, it may darken it a little bit. So what you'd prefer to do is put the dark colors on first and then spray your light colors. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do the little painting like on the air cleaner, the air filter, any of the little spots that I feel that when I cover that, I want that to remain a certain look. If I was to spray this thing white, I would never be able to go back and put the black in the air cleaner or the air cleaner lid, any of that stuff. So I want to get that all addressed first in these bodies, then I can go through and start worrying about what I'm going to do with my paint scheme. One more thing, before I get going with this, I always keep a clean tack rack. I say clean. I did a little bit of painting and it's just a little bit dirty, but it's really not that bad. It's pretty new. I've only had it open for about 3 days. But keep a tack rag. Tack rags are cheap. You can get them at any paint store. Westco Paint locally carries them. They're just a couple of dollars, and they're great for tacking these out. Whenever you're tacking, don't shove that thing into it because there is little bits of glue on here that pick up that dust and that debris and they stick it to the rag. So don't push it in. After you use it, you'll feel your fingertips being a little bit sticky. If you were to shove that in there and put some of that down, you're going to see it under your paint, or in this case, over top of your paint, between your paint and the body. So lightly just dust over it. Make sure you get all the corners. Get down in those little pockets. Give it a little blowout, and then you're ready to rock and roll. This one's going to have a really simple black and white. He just wants a really simple paint scheme, kind of like his real car. It's black in the middle, white on the sides. So I'm going to go ahead and get this all sprayed, masked up. Here's a real quick hack to keep from slicing into your plastic when you're using your X-Acto knife to trim lines where you're painting on your plastic RC body. Run your first piece of tape down as close to your corner as you can get it. This way, when you run your second one over it and you cut through this one with your razor, you're not going to cut through this one all the way, but you're especially not going to get down to your plastic. This will keep you from leaving a weak spot or potentially a slice clean through your plastic. That little tiny area right there is the only time our blade actually touched the plastic. When I'm trying to get my fine line pushed down into these corners, the best way that I have found that works for me is to use my little plastic spreader. I can put it down in there and ensure that it's all the way down in that little tight curve before I move forward. Even when I put down my actual tape itself, I can ensure that it's pushed all the way down into that corner with my plastic spreader, and I won't have any paint blow through or bleed. This is the one that I used the liquid mask on the windows. It has all cured. I've unmasked it. I've got perfectly clean lines, which you'll see as the color goes on and we unmask those. You'll see how perfect those lines turn out. I had one little spot where it picked up that I've got to repair, but that'll be a quick one. This one's ready for paint. The only thing that I would say now when we go ahead and start masking this, We got to be careful when we put tape over top of that, because we push the tape down, no different than regular tape masking those windows up. When you go to yank your tape off, it could pick up that that tape underneath that's sealing us up, seal up our windows here. So whenever you're unmasking stuff, just be really, really careful. Pull hard against it. So you basically pull it 180 at a hard angle so you don't peel into there so easy. If you do pick that up, you have to go back and fix it. It's not a big deal. Painting stuff like this, as I said earlier, you've got to think about it kind of backwards from what you would normally think. You're going to want to put the top piece, or the piece that's most visible, first, as opposed to, you know, when we're painting a helmet, it goes on last. So we've just got to back everything up when we're planning on it. I'm ready to start masking this one. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do for a design on this one yet, but we'll just see how it comes. Secondly, we have this body, and again, it's a dirt late model body. It did come with window masks, so the windows are all masked up. Everything's been cut, sanded. I Scotch-Brighted the inside of everything, and I took a lot of care to make sure that I didn't Scotch-Brite over those windows, because when it's all finished, you want to look through. You don't want to see that cloudiness. You want it to be nice and clear. Yeah, dirt late models don't typically have windows. I'm going to leave the side window and the quarter window in it, but I will remove the front and back windows just to try to get a little bit more authentic. I'm thinking about doing like a Skull Bandit look on it. I think it'd be kind of neat with, you know, the design of the body. Not really sure how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to go ahead and start masking this. There's a couple ways. These things floating around on top of the counter, they're kind of tough to mask around. So I'm going to go ahead and just tape this thing down. Just use a piece of 2-inch tape right along the bottom there, right over the edge of my counter. It's a little bit floppy, but then I can just take my lacquer thinner can, put behind it. Now I can do all my designing on this side, and then I'll flip it over, copy it to that side, and then do whatever I need to do on the hood. So, yeah, let's see what we come up with. This one's all ready for the first color. The first thing I'm going to spray is green. I got this really cool metallic green that I'm going to use. I'll put it down. Yeah, I think it's going to be a unique little design, and yeah, we'll see how she looks here shortly. So what I'm using here is a perforated piece of film that, like when you're printing wraps and you're going to wrap over a window, they use this type of material that has tons and tons of little holes in it, so you can see through it from one side, but you can't see through it from the other side. It's basically just got millions of little perforations. This does have an adhesive back, but I've used it so many times the adhesive is pretty much worn off of it. It just lost its stickiness, so I just kind of tape it down, and then you go through and you airbrush, and it leaves this type of a look. So now I can go back and do a little bit more airbrushing in there, and then when I back it with white, it'll have a really, really neat texture to it. A couple of things that I did when I put this face on here, I knew I was going to run red into green, and generally red and green, I don't think they get along super good. It's like kind of putting a red and a blue together. They kind of clash a little bit. So I did a couple of things to prevent this. One, I took my small paintbrush and my white paint that I used, you know, on the other parts. I brushed in a really, really, really thin, roughly 1/16 of an inch outline around the head. I know it's hard to see, and we'll see it better later on, but there you can kind of see how that white outline is. Also, after I got the white outline done, I airbrushed in a neon yellow outline around all this, just a really, really thin outline, and basically my goal was to, with the metallic gets kind of that, you know, what's metallic? It gets that kind of color shift. With that neon on there, it gives it more of a stable color to kind of see that white contrast against. So I feel like both of them are going to help to the outline, the design. We just got to get her finished up. The bandana face, or the bandana will be red. The actual face is white, I believe, in the picture. So we'll get that done. We'll airbrush that. When we airbrush that white, we will also airbrush this line, so we'll have red, white, and black, just like on the face. So you have the face screaming down the side, and then on the top we'll have the black, and then the white lines on either side of the black. I will not add any red to this, just because, again, I'm afraid of getting too much red and making it look like a Christmas tree. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to go ahead and proceed with time lapse, and this thing will be done here by the end of the day. Okay, I know it's difficult to see this. I don't know how else to set up my camera, but you'll see right inside here where I've got this little blow-through spot, and here's how I go about cleaning those up. Just use the edge of your X-Acto knife and slowly get in there and work the outside lines of it. Then after you get the outsides, go ahead and remove the center. I'm not pushing very hard. It's really, really light. It shouldn't take much pressure to peel this off here. Just gently scratch that out of there, and you'll wind up with a nice, clean corner. We are ready to unmask our gold area, the last final pinstripe for the gold. The roof, as you saw in the time lapse, I almost forgot this thing. My plan was just to do it black in the center and then gold on the side. And since we have the gold on the side, we've got this gold pinstripe, so the side of the roof will be gold, and we have a little bit of gold in our stripe here, which I think turned out pretty rad. Yeah, that would be a nice, clean, classy look. So let's unmask it. Let's get this gold on here. We'll back it with white, and this thing will be ready to send home. So now I've got all my colors in. They're basically finished. But before I rip this off, I'm going to go ahead and back them with black. That way they just look clean inside. It'll make it easier to wipe them off if anything gets splattered on them or anything. So I'm going to go ahead and hose them real quick with some black. And then we're going to do the old unwrap, see how they look.